Hello folks, I'm Lilia, the author and founder of Intelligent, a place on the internet where we do self-development and learn some English along the way. In this video, we're going to talk about you. Teaching English is mainly about methods upon methods on top of methods on top of methods. If you go to a teaching conference, you're very likely to discover that the main theme of major conferences dedicated to teaching English these days have to do with methodology. However, in this video, we're going to talk about some of the more personal qualities that a teacher should have in order to teach effectively. The reason why I'm excited so much about those methods is because I've been applying them personally in my 12-year teaching career, and I'm very confident that once you adopt those methods and include them into your teaching treasure trove, you'll be able to translate those methods into the other areas of your life to make your other interactions effective, just apart from teaching, whatever you do. After all, it's you, it's us who are doing the teaching. We are the only instrument that is present in our teaching on a day-to-day basis, no matter which textbook we choose to teach by or which method we choose to apply. So the first principle of effective teaching is honesty. Being honest about three major themes in your teaching: giving feedback, acknowledging your limitations, and saying I don't know. Why might honesty be such a kicking ass situation? The reason why many of us choose to stay away from honesty is because we have an agenda. And honesty does not necessarily fit within this self-serving interest that we have. It's very natural for us to want to appear intelligent and to appear role-knowing to our students because we have a very deep conviction that our teaching, the quality of our teaching, depends on us knowing stuff. With that in mind, it might be very difficult to expose your vulnerability in front of a student, but actually, if you want to make your teaching effective, that's something that you're going to do. I have a video on this channel titled How to Give Kind and Honest Feedback. So with regard to the first big milestone of honesty, watching that video might be a great idea. The second area of honesty is acknowledging your limitations. The limitations not of yours, let me reformulate that a bit, but of your method, rather. I get constantly asked by learners who want to work on their pronunciation whether I can teach American accent. And every time a student comes into my office or interacts with me online, I tend to be very honest, even though that will mean that I'm losing that client potentially. But I have to tell them that, no, I don't teach American accent. My honest understanding that I cannot speak with an American accent is something that dictates this choice of telling the student that I cannot teach it. It does not mean, however, that we cannot work on our limitations. Lifelong learning is something that we should adopt, and we're going to talk about that principle a bit later in this video. So recognizing your limitations and communicating directly to the student what those limitations are will very likely result in them going and finding a teacher who can satisfy that need that they have with regard to the English language. The third point to make about honesty is being open about saying I don't know when it comes to a word or a grammatical point during the lesson. So we're talking minute things right now, but those are very important. I remember that in the early stages of my career, I would very easily succumb to this desire to be super knowledgeable, like an encyclopedia in my mind. And I would very often, when a student would ask me a question, I would sidetrack if I didn't know the exact answer, or I would give them an answer that I was not 100% confident about. Instead of sending them to a dictionary, or instead of asking them to Google up that word or Googling it up together. Right now, I have a very strong and confident realization that that type of behavior does not contribute to effectiveness of learning by that student. It does not take away from the need for you to work on your fluency or on your accuracy. However, what I'm trying to say here is that it's super important for us to be honest with our learners in terms of the little language things that we genuinely don't know. Looking for truth, together is a very exciting adventure. So see if you can engage your student to come and join you in that adventure so that you can do it together. And let me guarantee that that very moment of you exploring the truth of that linguistic point, be it a word or a tense, together will create a better memorization, a better experiential association for your learner when it comes to learning things. The second principle is lifelong learning. And I'm not just talking about attending conferences or learning more about methodology or reading Scrivener's books or James Harmer's books, even though those are incredible. What I'm talking about when I'm referencing lifelong learning is the genuine understanding of whatever is going on in life in all multifaceted domains of our life, including politics, economics and economy, mathematics, linguistics, environment, spirituality, religion, science, you name it. Just understanding those areas ourselves will make us better conversationalists. We'll be able to act spontaneously in our lessons. So we will add more value both to the linguistic side of our teaching and also to the ideas-oriented side of our teaching. And that will be very engaging for the learner to be around a person who understands reality. But even more than that, someone who has an open mind to even go and investigate what is going on in life. For many of us, for most of us, for the majority of us, and this is a very sad tendency that you might have also observed, apart from the teaching conferences where you go to, because in those environments, teachers tend to be open-minded and teachers are very, very happy and willing to learn about new things. In our everyday reality, most people are not very curious about life. And I find this to be a very sad thing. Most people just live by their conditioning, by their socialized ideals that were programmed into our minds when we were growing up. And that's not a very fascinating way to go about life, in my opinion. So just learning about various facets of life and bringing yourself as an instrument equipped with this knowledge into your classroom will make you an indispensable professional to be around and for the learner to just absorb things from you without having to necessarily participate in a conversation with you. 3, joining your student in how they see things. It's super crucial to develop this ability, and this will also bear fruit in other areas of your life, to look at the very same situation that we're both participants to from the other person's perspective. Looking into perspectives and recognizing that the universe, as we know it, is highly perspectival, is a milestone for a teacher. It's a very important skill to develop. One of the reasons for why our teaching may be ineffective might be that we are not good at perceiving a situation from their perspective. We might be doing something that we were taught to do in a teaching course, whereas it might be completely unacceptable from the student's perspective, or they might not even have an idea for why we're doing the things that we're doing. When we're choosing language, when we're talking to an elementary student as opposed to the advanced group that we teach on Fridays, for instance, it might be necessary, and it is necessary, to keep an eye on the language that we choose. We may formulate one and the same question in a myriad of ways depending on the level of English of the student who we're talking to. We might also formulate that question differently depending on the level of psychological development that they're at. Spiral dynamics and Ken Wilber's integral psychology are indispensable for that goal. Learning more about people's values might be a great practice. Learning about the things that propel people's actions in the world might be a great area for us to study if we want to learn to communicate with people from all walks of life in a way that contributes to their learning, that helps us establish rapport, that puts us into a relationship where our communication is effective. That's the reason why I have created Intelligent in the first place. I'm noticing that there is not enough depth in the current level of English teaching. We tend to regard English as just a language without even questioning enough what a language is and what function it serves and how important it is to us on all levels of our experience, just beyond our classroom. And I'm finding this super important to know because language is the main medium through which we express ourselves in the world. So it's super important to know how to express ourselves effectively. And in order to do that, we need to be aware of the level of intelligence, be it emotional intelligence or the cognitive intelligence or artistic intelligence or spiritual intelligence of the person who we're talking with. The reason for failed communications is very often that we don't pay enough attention to looking at the situation that we're both inhabiting from the other person's perspective. And that is something that has to be learned for the teacher in order for us to transmit that understanding to our learners so that they can grow into effective human beings who can communicate things effectively. 4. Clarity of expression. Clarity of expression ties in very nicely with what we've just discussed. We've talked about effective communication and how important it is to learn to be someone who can express himself or herself in a way that conveys the experience precisely. We very often use language in a way that is vague and ambiguous. And hand on heart, I often find it very difficult to structurize my speech. I do remember some of the videos that I shot years ago where I would just construct very long-winded sentences. I am quite skilled in creating connections between parts of a sentence or anything, but I find it very difficult to express myself clearly. So that is something that I'm practicing every single day. I realise and recognise how important it is for a teacher to be clear in his or her explanations of what they say. And even more than that, being clear in your communication is going to contribute to your life immensely. You can do an exercise. Think about an area of life that you're good at. It could be drawing, it could be sewing, it could be architecture, it could be video games. Think about something that you're truly fond of and record yourself explaining that area of life to a 5-year-old child. You can make a 1 or 2 minute recording just explaining how it works and see if you can be clear enough. Then in a more teaching related kind of field, think of a language point. Let's say think about present perfect. Record yourself explaining present perfect to someone whose level is elementary. Think of yourself explaining present perfect to someone whose level is upper intermediate. Which points would you add to your first explanation versus your second explanation? Which vocabulary would you rely on for either of those explanations? And now finally think of a word. What's your favourite word in the English language? I have quite a few. For instance, one of my favourite words that I have recently learned is imminent. I'm reading something from Rupert Spira, and he often uses the word imminent to talk about the ever-present nature of our awareness that is imminent in awareness, that is imminent in our being. If I had to explain it to someone who is pre-intermediate, given they have some understanding of non-duality, I would say that imminent is something that is part of something else. It is always part of something else. It can never be not a part of something else. If I were explaining the word imminent to an advanced learner, for instance, I would say that imminent means inherent, ever present, indispensable for the functioning of a thing or a process. Can you see how those explanations differ? Feeling into the language and feeling into the level of the words that you use is also imminent in that prior step that we discussed today when we were talking about the necessity of looking at the situation, the learning experience through the learner's eyes, from their perspective. 5. Listening and presence. Genuine presence. Genuine presence means that we're not wandering off into the land of Instagram likes or what's for dinner, but that we're truly present with our learner in the moment we're teaching them. We're truly there. Our attention is on them. The light of our attention is solely on the experience that is happening right here and right now. I got really fascinated by how powerful genuine presence can be when I was having a conversation with a friend the other day who was highlighting that in her therapy sessions, she likes to, and she also finds it very effective to help people heal by being present. Therapist's presence is probably one of the most liberating and welcoming experiences in the world to facilitate healing. With that in mind, I want you to encourage to practice presence. And how can you do that? By practicing mindfulness, by being present with your bodily sensations, by being present with whatever experience is. And here I just cannot recommend Rupert Spira enough, because I find that his work is so incredible in that respect. Rupert Spira is a teacher of non-duality, and he talks a lot about being with experience as it is and allowing the experience to unfold right now. One great thing about presence, and it's also a curse of it if you look at it from a certain perspective, is that you cannot fake it. We cannot fake presence. We're either present or we're not. Just like with all the rest of the principles in our conversation here, it's not a method that you can choose to either apply or not. Once you start applying those methods to your everyday experience, you will notice how your whole experience of interactions with other human beings, and also with yourself and with the world, starts to gradually change. So it's really crucial that we work on these principles as a person, on a personal level. And then we might start working on them from the perspective of awareness, which is the only true perspective, as Rupert Spira puts it very succinctly. It's not that we just go and learn a bunch of methods and bring them into our classroom experience. It doesn't work like that. That will always feel very fake. In order to apply these principles to your teaching, these principles must first be worked on in your own good time, on a personal level. And then they will be brought into your teaching, and the teaching will be just one of the many areas where those principles will be applied. I really hope that you've enjoyed this material, and if you have, make sure you give me a like and subscribe to my channel. That will help me communicate with more and more people on a level that is deeper than the mainstream. And if you're interested in this method that I'm encouraging, in this teaching that I'm passing on, I'm very willing to invite you to come and visit my Facebook page, where I from time to time run live streams where we can interact and we can ask questions, and I'll be very happy to respond to your questions that have to do with integrating non-dual understanding and psychology and philosophy, and understanding of awareness and life, infinite understanding within the world of English language teaching. Let's be proud of our nerdiness, and I will see you soon.